I'm always looking for books on philosophy where I can find interesting conversations around philosophy and ideas. And recently, I came across this book called The Complete Philosophy Files. Actually, it's a collection of two books, The Philosophy Files Part 1 and Part 2, written by Stephen Law. And although this book was originally intended for children, I thought anybody of any age would find it interesting because what the author is doing in this book is he's picking out certain very basic topics and then asking questions around them, discussing various ideas around that topic. He's making them think, and I believe if you are of any age, you'd love that exercise, thinking around difficult questions. That is something that gives such an exciting intellectual stimulation. So, as I said, the author discusses various interesting philosophical debates, and then he phrases those questions and then explains them with the help of a story, and then kind of lays out arguments of both sides. And then he makes you think and makes you come to some kind of conclusion, whichever way you say it. He's not forcing his opinion on you, but he's making you think. So the questions like, does God exist? What is real? What is not real? How do I know the world is not virtual? And what about right and wrong? Where do they come from? Who am I? And the question of, should I eat meat? And that one I found really interesting because the author himself acknowledges the fact that he's a meat eater, and he's not going to defend it, but rather he's going to look at this point intellectually, the veganism argument, and then he's going to assess it on the merits. So that's what he does. And that is the question that I'm going to discuss with you in this podcast. So I will first narrate the story that author tells us in this chapter, and we'll come to the questions later, but let's just go through the story, and from that story itself we can see the challenges in this problem, that should we eat meat or not, or in any case is it right or wrong? Where do we stand morally on this question? And we'll see the different sides of it. But first, the story. So the story is that of Errol, the explorer Errol, and he loved to sail the seas looking for new lands. So what happens on one of his trips up to the north? He discovers a small mountainous island. It is covered in forest. Then he decides to leave his crew behind on the ship and goes for rowing a boat quite alone. Errol has taken with him some supplies, lemonade, sandwiches, etc., etc. So as he goes deeper into the forest the next day, after an hour or so, he begins to see the signs of human life. There are some clearings in the forest, certain burnt areas, and something that looks like a campfire. So he gets really excited. He's wondering who is there. Probably some kind of humans live here. He might discover a new tribe after all. That sounds exciting, isn't it? So eventually, after several hours, Errol, he comes to a much larger clearing, and there in the middle of all this clearing, some really strangely dressed people, they appear out of nowhere. And these strangers, they are wearing purple vests and some kind of odd red hats, which are shaped like upside down triangles. They're standing in silence, looking at him from up to down, as if they were waiting for him. But our hero, Errol, is already very excited. He raises his hand as a sign of friendship. And the three strangers, they look at him in some kind of curiosity. They start talking to each other. And surprisingly, Errol finds out that he can understand their language. In fact, it's not really that different from his own language. And then, to his horror, he begins to understand what they're trying to say. And this is what they say one by one. One of them says, "He looks very nice and big, enough for everyone, don't you think?" And then the other one says, "Wow, such nice muscles. He should taste very good." And the third one says, "But I would like the brains. I always get the brains. They are the best part." So the second one says again, okay, you can have the brains. Let's get on with it." Now, it doesn't take Errol too much time to understand that these three strangers, they are cannibals. They are people who eat other people. And they start walking towards Errol. What does he do? What can he do? He tries to run, but they are very fit and quick, and they catch hold of him. And within no time, he finds himself quite naked and trussed up like a turkey. And now they have suspended him from a long pole under the wooden logs, and below him there's a fire getting ready to barbecue him. And then Errol sees a woman. She's carrying a knife and she's slowly moving towards him. Errol knows what she is going to do. So he says, wait, please don't eat me. And that woman very casually, she replies, "Why should we not eat you?" So he says, "Because it's wrong. Don't you see? It's clearly wrong." And the woman says, "No, I don't see. Why is it wrong?" Errol says, "Look, you don't need to eat me, do you? You all look jolly well fed. Eat something else, some roots or grain or bird or something." The woman looks puzzled now. She says, "But we like eating people. They taste good. Why shouldn't we eat them?" So Errol asks, "Well, then in that case, why don't you eat each other?" The woman replies, "But none of us wants to die. So it is better than that we eat you instead." To that, Errol replies, "But you see, I don't want to die either. I am a living thing. I am enjoying my life. Don't you see that? It is very wrong to end my life just so you can enjoy eating me." Now the people around who are just getting ready for food, they also get into this conversation. Some of them, in fact, agree with Errol. One of them says, "Yeah, probably he's right. He sounds right." But the woman, she doesn't listen to them. She puts her hand into Errol's rucksack, and then she pulls out something. And out of that rucksack comes out this half-eaten sandwich. "What is this?" she asks. He says, "That's my lunch. It's a beef sandwich." So she smirks and she asks him, "This beef that you are eating, that is a part of a living animal, isn't it?" "Yeah, I guess it was," he says. So then woman sees his hypocrisy and asks again. So it was a living thing. It was enjoying its life. It didn't want to die. And yet, it was killed so you could enjoy eating its flesh. What's wrong with me doing that? To that, Errol says, yeah, but that's just an animal. It's all right to eat animals, but not humans. Humans are different. But humans are animals too, the woman says. Why is it wrong to eat human animals if it is not wrong to eat non human animals? Now that's the dilemma, and very difficult to answer this question unless you make some kind of religious argument. So at that point he gets stuck. Role, he says, it is wrong. It just is wrong. Don't you see that? But no, they couldn't see that. We don't understand. All of them, those cannibals, they say, please explain. And then what happens is Errol couldn't come up with a good reason. So these people, they kill him, cook him, and they have their food. This story sounds a bit weird. It sounds a bit tragic in the end. They ate this human being and they are acting normally. But this is what we do at our dinner parties if you look at from the point of view of the animal. And that itself, this question of whether to kill or not kill animals for the sake of pleasure and food, that's a difficult one. And that is what the author tries to discuss in this particular chapter. And as that woman phrased this question really is, why is it wrong to kill and eat human animals, but not wrong to kill and eat non-human animals? So after telling this story, the author Stephen Law talks about different arguments. And I think from this story itself, it's fairly easy to make argument in support of veganism. Why should you kill any living being? Why should you kill a life? That's a very strong argument. But let's just see the arguments that many meat eaters make and see their point of view and how author frames those arguments through different conversations, and are there any loopholes in those arguments. So one of the popular arguments, although not really a strong argument, is that it's okay to meat eat because that's what we have been doing. That's pretty much everybody does, isn't it? But as the author shows, this is not particularly strong, because as it has been happening throughout history, that does not matter whether majority agrees with something or not. If slavery was legal and considered moral at one point, it does not mean slavery today is considered legal or moral, or it doesn't become moral in every society. We can still question it. So just because if a practice has been going on, and we know throughout history very barbaric practices have happened, like there used to be child sacrifices in certain religions. Now that's pretty barbaric, but doesn't make it very moral, isn't it? So although this argument is pretty popular among those who don't really go into philosophy, but it doesn't hold much value. The other argument is that it's natural to eat meat. That's how we have evolved. Our ancestors, they did this. And once again, there are certain obvious problems with this argument, because the way we have evolved, it's very different from today's morality. Because our evolution talks about our own physiological urges. If we go by that, at some point we can also justify rapes, we can also justify certain other heinous crimes Like aggression comes very naturally to human beings. That's how we evolved. We killed animals, we killed even people. So, should we justify all of that? No, that cannot be a good argument. Then there's another argument that comes, which is slightly tricky one. It says that we're not really picking those animals and killing them. What we are doing is we are creating some kind of farms where we are breeding animals. So basically, we are giving life to them so that eventually we can eat them. Or, in other words, we give them life so that we can take it away from them. It's not really theirs, it's ours. So, once again, if you follow that logic to human beings, would that mean that if a parent kills their child, they're justified to do so? Because they gave that child that life. Wouldn't it be justified? But doesn't seem like that. So clearly, once again, this argument doesn't hold much value. And then there is another argument which goes something like this, that okay, fine, animals have life and they do experience feelings, but still they are stupid. They are not really highly evolved people like us. They are not really smart. But that again asks a very difficult question. What do we do with humans who are not really capable, who are not really the smartest, who are not really physically or emotionally or psychologically capable than the rest of us? So, attacking the weak in that case, or killing the weak, is it justified? In fact, if we go by that logic, then it should be fine to kill your pets also. But as we have seen, there are laws against that. And although in certain countries, for example in China, people do kill and eat dogs, but that's not a practice that we follow everywhere. And we do consider those kind of things immoral in certain cultures. Then why should that be if we go by this argument? Now, there is another argument that animals also kill animals, and that's how this nature works. And so, what we are doing is we are pretty much following the nature's part. But once again, nature does a lot of things. Animals are not really the messiah of morality. So, we don't need to look up to them to decide our morality, what good is, what right or wrong is. Besides, in a lot of cases, if you see animals, they kill for their needs. They kill and eat other animals just to survive. They don't do it for pleasure, for parties where they just eat and just throw it around. They don't do that. So even if we compare ourselves to animals, we are doing much worse there. And then there is another, probably the last argument that we can find from meat eaters, is that if you don't really subscribe to this idea of meat eating, then you will have to give up a lot of things. You'll have to become a hardcore extremist vegan. Like you give up leather, you give up all kind of things that that lead to animals' oppression. For example, dairy products. So in a lot of dairy farms, what happens is they have to breed these animals. Then in cows and buffaloes, there are so many calves they have, and then eventually a lot of them get killed. So it's a part of the industry, and unless you completely cut it off, you're going to participate in this process. So everybody in that sense, and not just the meat eaters, everybody is a hypocrite. So why only question the meat eaters? And that itself is a defensive argument. It serves the practical purpose that nobody is perfect and everybody is a little bit of hypocrite. And that's the point. But still, philosophically, it doesn't make that strong a case. And that's where the author concludes that even though he admits he is a meat eater, but he finds those moral arguments for veganism really convincing. But then the question is, what do you do with those moral arguments? Do you make any change in your life? Or you just toss it out of the window?